Hi, welcome to another SCARFS video. Today we're talking about what I think is probably the biggest issue when it comes to sentence structure, and that is A for agreement or lack of agreement. When you've got lack of agreement in a sentence, it means that all the parts aren't working together. And so that can lead to it sounding confusing or just sounding awkward. And often it's something that you can kind of hear before you can even put your finger on what the problem is. It's a bit like when there's one person singing out of key in a choir. You know, you need all of those voices singing the same note and at the same tempo for it to sound really smooth. And when someone is off, the whole thing can sound a bit off. Well, it's the same with the sentence structure that has a lack of agreement. So there are four big areas where there might be a lack of agreement in sentences, and I will do a separate video on each of these, but I just want to quickly introduce those four areas to you with some examples. Okay, so the first area is where we have lack of agreement with the tenses in the sentence. So past, present and future tense. And sometimes they change unintentionally as we're writing our sentence. And unless it's a deliberate choice for some sort of stylistic reason, they shouldn't really change. And that's when it can end up sounding confused. Here's an example. As we load up the car, we had no idea what was waiting for us. So the way to see if you've got a lack of agreement is to find the first verb, in this case load, to load up the car, the first doing word, and ask yourself, is that past or present tense? So we load up the car, that's present tense. It's not loaded, it's present tense. So we really should see present tense continuing. But you can see here it slips into past tense. We had no idea, past tense. What was waiting for us, past tense. So we need them all to be the same. So if we were to change after this comma, the rest of this, so that it's present tense, then we'd have agreement. So that would be changing it to, as we load up the car, we have no idea what is waiting for us or what's waiting for us. Okay, the other way is to change this first verb so that it is in past tense, and then we can leave the rest of the sentence as it was. So we could have, as we loaded up the car, we had no idea what was waiting for us. That has agreement in tenses, and I prefer that version, so let's leave that there. The second area where we often find lack of agreement is between noun and pronoun. So when we talk about pronouns, we're talking about those little words like he, his, she, her, they, their, that we use in place of a noun later in the sentence so that we avoid repeating that noun over and over again. So in this sentence, the pronoun is their. Okay, we've got each student must bring their book. So the way to work out if you've got lack of agreement with noun pronoun is to find the pronoun, and then trace it back to what it's referring to, the noun it's referring to. In this case, each student. That's whose book we're talking about. Okay, but each student is singular. So this should be singular. So we've got a lack of agreement. So it would need to be each student must bring his or her book to be correct if we want to keep each student. The other possibility, like with tenses, is to change the first part. So you could make this, instead of each student, all students must bring their book. And then we've got plural and plural. So we've got an agreement between noun and pronoun. The third area where you might get lack of agreement is between subject and verb. And this is a big one. Okay, so I've given you an example here that's a common way that people get tripped up. Okay, because it doesn't sound all that bad, despite my earlier analogy with the choir. There's 50 people on the dance floor. The reason the agreement or the lack of agreement is kind of hidden here is because of this contraction. Okay, what you need to do to find out if there's a lack of agreement between the subject and the verb is, first of all, you need to find the verb. In this case, it's the verb to be, as in there is. So if we just put that there so it's clearer, there is 50 people on the dance floor. Suddenly we see the lack of agreement. 50 people is plural, is singular. We've got a lack of agreement there. So instead of there is 50 people on the dance floor, it should be there are 50 people on the dance floor. Okay, and then the last sort of coverall area where you might find lack of agreement is what's known as parallelism or parallel structure. And this is about making sure that, particularly with lists, the sort of form of your grammatical elements remains the same, like they match throughout the sentence. And here's just a very simple example to show you what I mean. I like to swim, hiking and reading. Okay, so these are in the form of a verb ending with ing, whereas this is not. And that's why it sounds a bit awkward. We need to change one or the other. So we either need to make it, I like to swim, to hike and to read, or, and I probably prefer this, I like swimming, hiking and reading. And then we've got that parallel structure with the ing verb being used throughout. Okay, so that's how we fix lack of agreement in sentences. In summary, if you'd like to know how to do it in detail for any of these 4 areas, have a look for that video under SCARFS. Thank you.